A UFO was caught on live TV in Brazil, hovering in the sky for over 2 hours. A woman on a Thai talk show in 2016 claimed she was possessed by a ghost, and right in the middle of the interview, the spirit seemed to take over, screaming and freaking out when the host pulled out a Buddha necklace. In Colorado, local news anchors were totally freaked out by a creepy-looking animal caught on camera. This is live TV footage that shows something not human. So what is this thing hovering in the sky? This footage is from a live news broadcast in Rio Branco, Brazil. On February 9th, 2009, TV Gazeta showed up to capture what witnesses described as a colorful object hovering over the city. Whatever this thing was, it changed color multiple times, flashing from blue to red to white. There were more than 25 witnesses that night who watched as this thing hovered in the sky for more than 2 hours. Then it moved from east to south and afterwards south to west. Pretty strange. Certainly doesn't look like a plane or satellite to me, and not that a drone would be totally unheard of in 2009. They certainly weren't as widely used as they are now though. Till this day, we still don't know exactly what this thing was. Alright, this one's pretty ridiculous, but I do love me some possession videos. Always fun to see what weird noises these evil spirits force out of people's mouths. Back in 2016, something pretty strange happened on a Thai talk show. A model came on the show and told everyone that she had picked up a ghost while on vacation in the city of Rayong the year before. She said this ghost was a pop, a type of spirit in Thai culture. It's known for having an uncontrollable hunger. At first, she just calmly explained what had happened to her. You know, ghost got inside my body somehow. Well, and then right in the middle of the interview, the pop just had to embarrass this poor woman on live television. To be fair though, she should have seen this coming. She'd been dealing with the thing's antics for a whole year at this point. Suddenly she seems to switch, like something else is talking through her. She started speaking in a different voice and just couldn't seem to snap out of it. No matter how much the hosts pushed her to stop, they kept telling the spirit to leave her alone, but it refused, making threats like, "Don't mess with me," which probably sounds a lot cooler in Thai. Then one of the hosts pulls out a necklace with a Buddha pendant. As soon as he held it up, she freaks out, screaming and recoiling in terror. Very loudly, I might add. I had to turn down the volume almost all the way because I was worried everyone was going to hear female screams through my headphones and that I'd be kindly asked to leave the office. Eventually, the host puts the necklace on her though, and just like that, she seems to come back to her senses. The clip went viral in Thailand and racked up millions of views. Just what is it we're looking at here? Well, this aired on a local news station in Pueblo, Colorado, and the anchors were genuinely confused, as were a lot of people watching, as to what they were looking at. It's some weird looking animal with patchy black fur, a reddish face, and long skinny arms hunched over eating something off the ground. Apparently the woman who filmed the creature had actually seen it once before, but she had no idea what it was either. Other than an animal with mange, the word chupacabra was thrown around a lot. Well, later on, Colorado Parks and Wildlife officials looked into it and said the animal was probably a raccoon with mange. Mange is a skin disease that can cause animals to lose most of their fur and look pretty rough. I mean, you take the cutest furry animal on earth, shave all its hair off, and it looks pretty damn freaky. This image here was shared on news stations all over the world. Nobody knew what the hell this thing was when news first broke, and nobody knows what it is now, but it's since become known as the unidentified Amarillo object. In 2022, the Amarillo Zoo in Texas got a lot of attention after they shared a strange image caught on their security cameras. The picture was taken at 1:25 a.m. by a motion detecting camera, showing a bizarre figure walking just outside the zoo fence. And what's creepy is that it's walking on 2 legs. Clearly though, this is not a person, unless they're wearing a costume, which is an odd thing to be doing at 1:30 in the morning, skulking around a zoo. When the zoo posted the image on Twitter, they leaned into the mystery, asking, is it a person with a strange hat who likes to walk at night, a chupacabra? Do you have any ideas of what this UAO, unidentified Amarillo object, could be? The zoo never outright claimed it was anything supernatural or like a cryptid or anything, but they didn't offer up any solid explanations either, because they didn't have one. Now, could this have been a weird marketing stunt? Maybe, but city officials and the zoo's director, Michael Kashiba, insisted the photo was not staged. And 3 years later, we still don't have any solid answers. These creepy images were shared to X by Scared for Life 2, who wrote that their friend works at Central Library in Manchester. In October of 2019, the uploader popped in for a visit, and the friend shared these images. They came from the security camera in the basement corridors. Now, I don't know about this place having any history of paranormal activity, but it was built in 1934, not super old, especially by England standards, but it is enough time to have racked up some history. And if anyone had died in the building, or was just someone who had a fondness for the place, maybe they never left. Remember the Myrtles Plantation? I've talked about it on the channel a number of times. It's said to be one of the most haunted places in the United States. Well, now we have some footage. This security camera happened to pick up something incredibly startling during a tour, right in the middle of the day. So the group is standing in the foyer. They're slowly making their way deeper into the home, very slowly, as this is not a group of spring chickens. And then suddenly, this happens. So a series of super loud bangs on the wall are heard, the mirror shakes violently, and then a sculpture falls down. Now, could this have been staged? There's always the possibility, but I hope that's not the case, because if it was, that was pretty messed up. You really shouldn't be playing pranks on old folks like this, especially with loud bangs. So this eerie piece of footage comes from a government office in Mexico City. According to the staff, especially the security guards, strange things were happening there all the time. They said they were constantly getting spooked, but the most disturbing part was that several of them claimed to see some kind of monk-like figure that would appear and harass them. People would also report hearing cries and screams in the early hours of the morning. Then one night, a security camera finally captured this, which looked exactly like the creepy figure that had been terrifying them night after night. Imagine you're alone at home in the middle of the night, cleaning up around the house, when suddenly something cuts through the silence. It's a whisper, and not only is it a whisper, but it's your name. This is what happened to Reddit user IggyTalls_15, who said, "I heard someone very distinctly whisper Mike from behind me. I thought one of my kids had walked downstairs, but when I saw there was no one, I bolted. It was just me and the dogs/cat around 12 a.m. This is also an old home from the 1850s, and a crew member who died in the Halifax explosion lived here in the early 1900s. Take a listen to this and a watch. Security footage from Wellington Indoor Market in Telford, England caught something that left workers a bit rattled the next day. When traders showed up one morning, they found a bunch of boxes scattered across the floor and stairs. At first they thought someone had broken in, of course, but when they checked the CCTV, what they saw was something else entirely. Dark, shadowy figure walking up the stairs and then knocking over the boxes. Now, it's not very easy to make out the figure walking up the stairs, but if you look closely enough, you can see some sort of shadowy shape appear. The boxes falling are clearly visible though. Market manager Kay Bokai said, "We came into the market in the morning and the boxes were all over the place. On the floor, over the stairs. We thought we'd had an intruder, so we obviously went straight to the CCTV. We couldn't believe what we saw. All the hairs stood up on the back of my neck. There was nobody there when the boxes fell off. We watched it again and we could see the shadow walking up the stairs, then chucking the boxes over." End quote. Now, this market isn't new to strange activity. It's been around since 1244. According to Kay, sometimes there are strange things that go on when people are alone. Some people say they have seen a shadow go past them. She also mentioned an incident where, quote, "2 people were alone in the market. They were talking when they heard coughing coming from the other side of the building. When they looked around, it was totally empty." Other weird moments include doors slamming and hand dryers turning on by themselves. Who is this staring at the security camera after hours? So a security guard monitoring a CCTV system got an alert that someone was on the property after hours, well past closing time when no one should have been there, other than him, of course. When he checked the footage, what the camera caught was unsettling, to say the least. there's this small, ghostly figure with glowing eyes standing in the distance. Some have said it looks like a little boy standing there staring right at the camera. The clip has since been linked to the legend of the Pocong, a ghost from Indonesian and Malaysian folklore. According to the belief, a Pocong is the spirit of a dead person who's still wrapped in their burial shroud. In some versions of the legend, the soul remains trapped if the ties around the shroud aren't removed after 40 days. And the spirit is forced to wander, often appearing as this pale figure with bound limbs and a haunting stare. What in the world is going on with this pool stick? This one comes from Reddit user Pumpkin Man, who shared the footage along with the caption, "I have a video of surveillance camera footage capturing a pool stick inexplicably snap itself in half on the leg of a pool table. This happened in a children's playroom at a small rural church. There have been dozens of other incidents of paranormal activity at this church spanning multiple decades. The people who I know personally that took this video and work at this church fully believe the place is haunted by a child ghost." Now, I gotta say, I've seen some paranormal videos on this channel before. This one's up there for me. This is pretty weird. The way that thing's moving sounds like they believe what they're seeing. This next video comes from a hospital. A security guard was doing his rounds when he came across this wheelchair in the middle of the room. So he stands there, scratching his head, probably wondering what it's doing sitting there, but then it starts to move. At first he doesn't notice it, but when he turns back to look at the chair, it's of course now facing in the total opposite direction, so all he can do is stand there stunned, likely too petrified to move. It's bad enough worrying about your bike getting stolen as it is without ghosts getting involved. This security footage was captured in Pakistan back in 2020. So what in the world? Now, there doesn't seem to be any strong winds blowing. Of course, there's nobody nearby either. Nothing that would cause the bike to roll on its own like that and then fall to the ground. So what happened? Was a ghost trying to steal someone's bike, then realized that they had no clue how to ride and just ditched it? Probably. But what do you all think? Thoughts in the comments, please. This one comes from Reddit user Signal Pollution 4881, who says he used to work at a haunted movie theater. He shared this security footage of something seeming to move past the camera. Take a look at this. Now, this footage on its own, I mean, it's weird, but it's not that crazy, right? Well, the backstory, there's a lot going on. So he and his brother worked the night shift cleaning the theater, and from their first shift, something felt off. During that first night, the uploader heard a baby crying in an empty auditorium, even though the building had been closed for hours. He searched the entire place, but it was empty. Over the next several months, they experienced odd things, doors opening and closing on their own, unexplained footsteps in the upstairs projector room. Eventually, even his brother, who'd been skeptical at first, became convinced that something was definitely wrong. About 6 or 7 months in, the uploader was alone upstairs when he saw a black figure about 20 feet away. It seemed to have no face. It was just this eerie, shadowy mass. Terrified, he ran off without even saying a word to his brother. From then on, he constantly felt like he was being watched through the projection windows. About a year later, his brother saw a thick black smoke cloud form out of nowhere in the bathroom before vanishing. Shaken, they finally started talking about their experiences. They kept working there though, because the pay was decent and the shifts were short. The activity mostly quieted down, just the occasional mysterious footstep. Sometimes they'd see things moving and would hear disembodied voices. This video came later after they'd already quit. It was sent to him by a former coworker around Halloween and seems to show the same black figure he once saw in the projection booth. This next clip reminded a lot of people of the Elisa Lam case, which is not going to be on this list. It's been talked about to death, so here's a good substitute. Eliza1818 was recording herself in this hotel hallway. She said she was being followed and was pretending to be on FaceTime to try and deter the person, but when she heard footsteps rushing toward her, that's when she just booked it down the hallway, calling out for help before finally reaching the elevator. And that's when we get some security footage. So she runs into the elevator and tries closing the doors. They don't budge. So she just huddles in the corner covering her face. Finally, out of options, she exits the elevator, at which point the doors finally decide to close. Now, it becomes pretty obvious that there's no one following her, at least not that we can see. Who knows if there was something actually going on. Looking at the security footage though, it does kind of seem like there's no immediate danger, that she's just imagining something. Eerily though, there's a brief moment in the hallway part of the security footage when a mysterious shadow passes over the wall. Take a look at this. What do you guys think of this one? Was someone or something following her, or was she just faking this whole thing? Share your thoughts down below. This one will make you wince. So here we see a couple dudes carrying a big sheet of glass into an elevator. It does not fit. But before they have time to exit the elevator and reevaluate things, the doors close, trapping the sheet of glass as it descends. Now at this point, I'd be covering my face, I'd be like turning away, not even knowing for sure what's gonna happen, but I feel like being around glass in such an unexpected, precarious situation like this, it's just kind of an instinct. But this guy, he just stands there, staring up at this sheet of glass, and then this happens. And he's lucky none of that shot into his eye. I mean, who knows, it might have. That glass was just obliterated. All right, this next one is pretty horrific. Back in June of 2017, CCTV cameras in Shanghai caught a woman standing at the entrance of an elevator, looking at her phone. Suddenly, she trips. One of her legs slips right between the closing doors, and before she could pull free, the elevator started moving. Instead of stopping, it just dragged her upward. 3 full floors, with her leg trapped the entire way. By the time it finally stopped, her leg was badly broken. Luckily, it was just her leg that got trapped, but still, good God. I can't even imagine how utterly painful and scary this must have been. Holy crap, watch this. I have no words. That is up there on my list of worst nightmares. Luckily, this comes from a Brazilian prank show though. The floor isn't actually falling out under her feet, but still, you can't do this to people. What if someone had a heart attack? I probably would. I'm just standing in an elevator when all of a sudden the floor tiles fall out from under my feet. I'm just staring into this abyss below. I don't know if this counts as a prank. This is just an attempt to break these people's minds. This last guy took a ride on what has to be the jankiest elevator I've ever seen. Apparently, he was riding the elevator in a newly constructed building. Yeah, very newly constructed, and that it looks nowhere near being finished. Well, in the middle of this terrifying ride, it sounds like this thing is just inches away from breaking down. A piece of building material just falls right into the elevator. Dust is flying, sounds of crunching and scraping fill the air. I'd be thinking I was about to die at any moment. And so did this guy, because he filmed his hands after finally getting off this death trap, and he was shaking like a leaf. Can't blame him. This first video comes out of Russia. Honestly though, it looks like something out of Final Destination. The security camera shows the lift stop. One guy steps out and another guy tries to get in, but the doors barely give him a second before the elevator suddenly shoots upward, with him halfway inside. And, it's this terrifying split second where he's got to either, go all the way in or pull out before his body gets crushed. Luckily, he wriggled back and ducked his head out just in time. If he hadn't, he would have been killed. One person on Twitter wrote, "This reminds me of the Final Destination scene when that lady got decapitated by the elevator." Now, most elevators have safety systems that, stop this exact thing from happening. Clearly, this one didn't, or it was just malfunctioning. Speaking of elevators malfunctioning, this guy climbed into an elevator and experienced an absolute nightmare that nearly cost him his life. So he enters the elevator, presses the button for his floor, but then something goes wrong. Very wrong. The elevator starts to ascend before the doors have even finished closing. Then the doors just open back up, but the elevator is still climbing up and fast. It's basically falling upward. I've said this on the channel before, but I've had recurring nightmares of being in an elevator and it's suddenly dropping. Never thought I needed to worry about one shooting up instead. New fear unlocked, I guess. This elevator rose more than 31 floors in just 15 seconds. And on the 31st floor, it crashed into the building's roof. That's what caused the camera to cut out. Now, luckily the dude lived, but he was seriously injured. Alright, this one's more of a Looney Tunes situation, but it still would have been scary as hell. So our main character for this story walks into the elevator dragging a vacuum cleaner. He's in the middle of wrapping the power cable around the vacuum when the doors begin to close. Problem is, part of the cord is still out in the hallway, so now the cord is caught in the doors, but the elevator starts to descend. Now, for some reason, this guy is standing there with the cord between his legs. My first course of action before pressing any of the buttons, before trying to pull the cord out of the closed doors like this guy does, I'd be stepping as far away as possible from that vacuum. And I'd make damn sure the cord wasn't between my legs for what is inevitably about to happen. This guy doesn't do that. So the vacuum gets pulled up as the cord unravels, taking the dude with it. Luckily, it snaps, he falls back to the floor, but I mean, ouch. Favorite comment on this video comes from Reddit user expert_matter, who said, perfect demonstration of how to floss your balls, which, oh, amazing. This next clip feels like something that would only happen in a Taco Bell-induced nightmare, but here it is, captured right on camera. Woman gets into the elevator, she's going to the first floor, elevator starts going down, reaches the first floor, goes right past the first floor, and just keeps going and going and going. She tries hitting the buttons to no avail. It just continues plunging deeper and deeper until finally coming to a stop. Through the windows, you see nothing but black. And then the doors finally open, revealing nothing but a dark void beyond. Not knowing what else to do, because the elevator clearly isn't working, she cautiously steps out into the darkness. But the doors close shut behind her and back up the elevator goes. Super eerie stuff. Now, I have no info on this clip, don't know who uploaded it or from where. Now, I'm gonna safely assume it's probably a hoax, but I don't care, I find it eerie as hell anyway. This footage comes from a manga cafe in Japan, where a security camera was aimed at the reception desk and the nearby elevator. First, it looks nothing more than a guy stepping out of the lift, but if you look behind him, there's something else in that elevator. Looks like a woman in a long red dress, but something is off about her. She's way too tall for the space, tall enough that she'd need to duck just to fit through those doors. The longer you stare, the stranger it gets. She isn't moving at all, almost like she's suspended in the air instead of standing on the floor. Some people who've studied this clip say it doesn't look like a person standing upright. It looks more like a figure floating inside the elevator. Now, as for what this entity could be, well, according to some locals who watched this clip at the time, the woman's appearance matched someone who'd recently taken her own life in a nearby park. Now we have this gray mound of rock near Weldon Spring, Missouri. It doesn't look all that interesting, but the backstory is pretty nuts. During World War II, the site was used to produce explosives. Then in the 50s and 60s, uranium was enriched for nuclear weapons at the facility. The problem was, when the operation shut down in the late 60s, they didn't really clean up. There were piles of uranium and radium, TNT, and asbestos left behind. It was just this giant toxic mess. If someone were to fall into it, they'd end up like that dude in RoboCop. So, to deal with it, the government decided to cover it all up. Not in a conspiratorial sense, I mean literally just cover it up. They built a giant hill to seal in all the radioactive waste and chemical debris. This mound is now called the Weldon Springs Site Remedial Action Project Disposal Cell. But locals have just nicknamed it the Nuclear Waste Adventure Trail. Today, people can visit the site, climb to the top of the mound, and get a view of the surrounding area. There's really not much to see other than grass out in the distance, but I guess it's cool to stand on. The hill is used by birdwatchers as well, and amateur astronomers who just like looking at the clear skies at night. I can't say that this would be my go-to spot on like a pleasant nature walk. I get that it's supposedly totally safe now, but I don't know, I still wouldn't want to spend too much time in a place like this. According to one former security guard though, they spent years working at the site without any major health problems. Still, it's a pretty weird spot for a tourist attraction. This is archival footage of a nuclear test being carried out at a site called Amarillo in Australia. The British government carried out a series of nuclear tests here between 1956 and 1963. 7 nuclear explosives were detonated above ground, along with over 600 minor trials. These minor tests were anything but harmless though. They involved experiments with plutonium, uranium, and other toxic stuff that spread contamination across the area. The fallout impacted not just the test site, but also nearby Aboriginal communities, many of whom were never properly warned or relocated. And the cleanup, which didn't start until decades later, has been heavily criticized. At one point, workers just bulldozed contaminated soil into pits and buried it. Some plutonium-contaminated areas were only partially cleaned and still are a risk today. Even after remediation, scientists have found radioactive particles spread far beyond the core test zones. Maralinga is technically open to visitors now, and some tours are available, but access is limited, which is a good thing. Long-term effects of the testing on the indigenous people here is still not addressed all that well, and the full health impact still isn't fully known. So it's isolated, but it's one of the most contaminated places in the southern hemisphere. This is footage taken in what's called a radon health mine. So this is a place where people pay to inhale radioactive gas for health reasons. The one you're looking at here happens to be in Germany, but Montana is really the place to go if you want to try this out for yourself, which I wouldn't do, but some swear by it. So in Montana, there are a handful of abandoned uranium mines that have been repurposed into these radon health mines. These mines naturally emit radon gas, which is radioactive and is said to increase your risk of cancer. But for decades, some people have believed that short-term exposure can actually help with conditions like arthritis, asthma, and just chronic pain. So instead of avoiding it, visitors pay to spend hours underground sitting in folding chairs just breathing it in. It's not backed by any major medical organizations, and the long-term effects here are questionable at best. Radon is a known carcinogen, and the Environmental Protection Agency lists it as the second leading cause of lung cancer in the US. Gotta say, this has to be one of the strangest uses of a radioactive site. This was the Baker Event nuclear test conducted at Bikini Atoll on July 25th of 1946. Bikini Atoll, part of the Marshall Islands in the Pacific, was used by the United States as a nuclear testing site after World War II. Between 1946 and 1958, the US detonated 23 nuclear weapons here, including some of the most powerful ever tested. The most infamous was Castle Bravo in 1954, which ended up being more than twice as powerful as expected and spread radioactive fallout across a much wider area than they'd planned. Nearby islanders weren't given proper warning and were exposed to high levels of radiation. Some were relocated, but the long-term effects were pretty bad, mainly increased cancer rates and, again, birth defects. To this day, the area is uninhabitable. Some former residents have been allowed some short visits, but nobody actually lives here full time. Oddly though, they tried to promote Bikini as a great place to dive. To be fair, the lagoon is filled with shipwrecks from World War II, but that's because it was a fleet used as nuclear target practice. Yeah, I don't know if this would be the first place on my list of diving destinations. This is Lop Nur in Xinjiang, China. It's a dried up lake bed also known as the Sea of Death. For decades, this was China's main nuclear testing site. Starting in the 60s all the way up to 1996, they ran 45 nuclear tests out here. They dropped explosives from planes, they did underground detonations, and blew up hydrogen bombs. It's super remote, which made it ideal for military use, but that didn't mean people weren't being affected. Some of the blasts released huge clouds of radioactive dust, and to this day, no one really knows the full impact on people or the environment. After the last test in 1996, the site went quiet. Until recently, in late 2023, satellite images showed some new construction popping up. Roads, fences, some buildings. Some think China's getting ready to start testing again, which the government has, of course, denied. This right here is what's known as one of the most radioactive areas of Chernobyl. That's saying a lot. After the explosion in 1986, a lot of the melted core material ended up pooling underneath the plant. One of the most dangerous things left behind is what's now known as the elephant's foot, this giant solid mass of radioactive goo made up of melted nuclear fuel, metal, sand, and concrete. It got the name because of the way it looks, like a huge wrinkled lump It kinda looks like elephant skin. At the time it formed, it was extremely radioactive. Just standing near it for a few minutes back then would have killed you. Photos were taken by bouncing cameras off mirrors so that no one had to get too close. The surface was so hot that it was physically burning through the floors. These days it's cooled down a lot, and it's not instantly lethal anymore, but it's still dangerously radioactive, and it's locked away deep inside the ruins of the plant. This is footage of one of the reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant exploding. So on March 11th, 2011, there was a massive 9.0 earthquake off the coast of Japan. This caused a giant tsunami which hit the power plant. The plant was designed to shut down automatically during emergencies like earthquakes, but the tsunami flooded the backup generators, which were supposed to keep the reactors cool. And with no power, the cooling system failed, and over the next few hours, the reactors started to overheat. The pressure built up, and 3 of the reactors went into full meltdown. Hydrogen gas built up inside the reactors, and eventually it exploded, sending radioactive material into the air. The fallout spread to nearby towns, and thousands had to evacuate. The ocean got contaminated as well, and on top of that, there were more nuclear emergencies, including a radioactive leak into a wastewater storage pool. Cleanup is still happening. It could take more than 40 years to fully decommission the plant. While the reactors have been shut down, the area around Fukushima is still heavily contaminated, and large parts are still off limits. This is footage of workers cleaning up radioactive sludge from the K East Basin. The K East Basin was a large pool at the Hanford site in Washington, D.C. It stored used nuclear fuel from a reactor called the N reactor. It was built in the 50s close to the Columbia River, which made it risky if anything leaked. Well, over time, the fuel started to break down, creating a thick radioactive sludge at the bottom of the pool. The basin became heavily contaminated, and it was getting concerning, so the US Department of Energy decided that it needed to be cleaned up. Workers removed the fuel and sludge over the course of years. Once the cleanup was done, they drained the water and filled the basin with grout to prevent anything left inside from spreading. These workers were vacuuming about 55 cubic yards of radioactive ooze. They stood on grates suspended above the 20-foot deep basin and used vacuuming equipment at the end of long poles. You'll notice there are also shots from the underwater cameras that they used to help guide their work. This is drone footage of Pripyat, a place that's been frozen in time ever since the Chernobyl disaster in '86. This town, once home to workers at the nuclear plant, was evacuated within 36 hours of the meltdown, and people left everything behind. The streets are now empty, the buildings are decaying, and nature is slowly covering the area. As you can see, this footage is kinda eerie. The abandoned buildings, the rusted playgrounds, the iconic Ferris wheel. It looks like a set from The Walking Dead. As cold and quiet as the place is, though, radiation is still very much a problem here, and most of the town is off limits. What you're looking at here is just one of the many nuclear explosions at a test site called Semipalatinsk in what is now Kazakhstan. The Semipalatinsk test site was one of the most active places for nuclear weapons testing during the Cold War. Between 1949 and 1989, the Soviet Union conducted over 450 nuclear tests here. This made it one of the most radioactive places in the world. The tests were kept secret from the public for years, but the long-term effects are still being felt to this day. People living nearby have suffered from higher rates of cancer and more birth defects, and the environment's been permanently damaged. The site was abandoned after the Soviet Union fell, but to this day, radiation levels are still very dangerous in some parts.
This one isn't a glitch in the video, it's a glitch in the broadcast itself, and it's straight up like something out of a techno thriller. In November 1987, Chicago sportscaster Dan Roan was doing the nightly news when suddenly the signal hijacked. TV screens went black for a second, and then viewers were suddenly staring at a bizarre figure. Someone in a Max Headroom mask bobbing around in front of a swiveling metal background. No sound, just 30 seconds of this super creepy masked intruder. Engineers managed to regain control on that channel, but it wasn't over. About 2 hours later, during a Doctor Who episode on another station, Max Headroom hacker struck again, this time with audio. The masked person spoke in distorted garbles, laughed, moaned, even exposed their bare behind to the camera while being spanked with a fly swatter. Yeah, it was really weird. After about 90 seconds, the pirate broadcast ended. Viewers and station officials were completely baffled. Who was that? How did they break into major TV station signals? The Federal Communications Commission launched an investigation, but to this day, the culprits have still never been caught or identified. Even decades later, watching the Max Headroom incident on YouTube will give you a serious case of the heebie-jeebies. Somebody has the chance to have the best deathbed confession of all time. Imagine your grandfather, you're saying your final goodbyes, and he's like, "I was Max Headroom." That would be crazy. When a news crew went looking for ghost stories, they might have gotten more than they bargained for. In 2021, WNYT News Channel 13 in upstate New York did a live report from the Green Ridge Cemetery as part of a Halloween segment. Reporter Sam Hessler was on air in the pre-dawn hours, walking among the tombstones while a guide shared spooky historical tales. The broadcast went smoothly until viewers at home noticed something on their screens that even the crew on site missed. In the background, behind Sam, a misty white figure seemed to drift between the graves. It was brief and subtle, a flicker of what looked like a person or a fog moving fast. After the live shot, one astonished viewer alerted the station, and Sam herself was stunned reviewing the footage. She hadn't seen anything in person. WNYT later acknowledged the eerie moment, assuring folks the clip was unedited and truly aired live. The internet, of course, lit up with ghost caught on live TV posts and theories. Some paranormal enthusiasts called it one of the best accidental ghost sightings on a news broadcast, evidence of a spirit roaming the cemetery. Skeptics countered that it could have been a camera glitch, a passing car's headlights reflecting, or even a stray piece of insect or dust close to the lens creating a blur. The station's own write-up teased it as something almost too crazy to be real and encouraged viewers to watch and decide for themselves. You're watching HGTV and suddenly an emergency alert pops up warning that the end of the world is here. What do? That nightmare scenario actually happened to some TV viewers in Southern California in September 2017. Without warning, regular programming was interrupted by the emergency alert system. The typical alert banner scrolled, but then things got truly terrifying. A booming male voice came on and proclaimed, "Realize this, that in the last days, extremely violent times will come." Imagine hearing that out of the blue on a Thursday morning and you're just trying to love it or list it. Understandably, people freaked out. It sounded like a prophecy of an imminent apocalypse or some wartime broadcast. As dramatic as it was, this turned out not to be the work of pranksters or an alien overlord, but simply a technical glitch and incredibly bad timing during a routine test of the emergency alert system. In short, the system glitched out and aired a fire and brimstone sermon by mistake. Cox and Spectrum cable customers heard what sounded like a doomsday warning, but it was just Pastor Chuck Swindoll quoting the Bible, 2 Timothy 3:1, on an FM station. Both the cable company and the FCC confirmed it was an error, not a hack, but not before scaring the heck out of viewers. In the middle of a live US Congress debate, viewers suddenly saw something Russian. In January 2017, politics junkies watching a C-SPAN online feed got a strange surprise. The feed, which was showing a live House of Representatives session, abruptly switched to Russia Today, the Kremlin-funded news channel, for about 10 minutes. Given that this occurred amid intense news about Russian cyber interference, many thought C-SPAN had been hacked by Russians in real time. C-SPAN quickly investigated and put out a statement. They didn't believe it was a hack, but rather a routing technical error. The leading theory is that some glitch caused the RT feed to literally overlap and replace the C-SPAN feed on their site. In simulation terms, it's like two different programs momentarily cross-wired. The timing, however, was almost comical. It happened just hours after a power outage oddly halted a Senate hearing about Russian hacking. Even Waters, whose speech was interrupted, remarked on the curious timing and demanded a clear explanation. Seeing Moscow news pop up in a US government broadcast felt like a scene from a spy movie, or a reminder that the simulation has a twisted sense of humor. Our final glitch was literally one word caught in an endless loop, and of course, that word was Russia. Also in January 2017, I guess a bad month for TV gremlins, MSNBC's show Hardball experienced a freaky moment. Journalist Dave Ignatius was talking to host Chris Matthews about, ironically, Russian interference in US politics. He said the word Russia and bang. The screen flickered and started repeating Russia, Russia, Russia over and over in a feedback loop. Chris Matthews looked confused as the glitch kept going for several seconds, echoing Russia in a creepy cadence until the control room cut to commercial. Given the climate at the time, Twitter exploded with jokes that Moscow hackers or the Kremlin Matrix had struck again, but most likely this was just a bizarre technical malfunction. Perhaps a failing satellite feed or encoding error that caused a few seconds of audio/video to loop. The fact it looped that particular word on that particular topic, well, that was gold for conspiracy lovers and also late-night comedians. MSNBC assured it wasn't intentional and nothing nefarious was found. If we do live in a simulation, it definitely has a flair for dramatic irony. Imagine watching a live news report and suddenly the reporter's words turn into total gibberish. That's exactly what happened during a CBS Los Angeles broadcast from the 2011 Grammy Awards. Viewers were stunned when reporter Serene Branson went from speaking normally to uttering a string of nonsensical sounds on live TV.
Well, a very, very heavy debatation tonight. We had a very Darrison.
She visibly panicked as she realized something was wrong, leading many to fear that she was having a stroke on air. Paramedics rushed to examine her, and thankfully, her vital signs were normal. It turned out Serene had suffered a complex migraine that mimicked stroke-like symptoms, causing sudden aphasia or speech impairment. In other words, her brain glitched, scrambling her speech. The clip went viral as a real-life Matrix moment, a healthy young reporter seemingly malfunctioning without warning. It was a scary sight, but also a relief when we learned it wasn't a true stroke. Still, for a few seconds of live TV, it felt like reality itself had briefly broken down. A famous weatherman suddenly freezes like an NPC caught in lag. On the Today Show in 2012, co-hosts Savannah Guthrie and Matt Lauer finished a silly dance joking about leaving room for the Holy Ghost between dance partners. That's when Al Roker, the beloved NBC weatherman, did the unthinkable. He stared directly into the camera, motionless with a goofy grin for a full 17 seconds. He didn't blink, didn't move a muscle. It was as if someone hit the pause button on Al Roker. Roker later explained that it was a bit of deadpan humor, essentially a brain freeze challenge he did on purpose. The show's director egged him on to see how long he could hold the pose, and Al committed to the bit. Even so, watching it back, many viewers felt a chill. The moment looked so uncanny that it's now a classic glitch in the Matrix clip. During a live soccer match, a shadow person sprinted through the stands, and no one can agree if it was a glitch, a ghost, or just a camera trick. This incident happened at a stadium in La Paz, Bolivia, during a Fox Sports broadcast in 2014. In the footage, you see a dark, human-shaped figure running rapidly across the lower tier seats straight through the crowd, yet no one in the audience seems to react to it. Viewers at home were creeped out. Was it a ghost caught on live TV? Rational explanations soon emerged. Lighting snafu or video artifact, basically a technical glitch that made a real person's image smear across the screen. But that hasn't stopped wild theories. The clip went viral, with some saying the stadium is haunted or that we witnessed a Matrix running program acting up. What's freakier than one person glitching? How about two people glitching together? Twin sisters Paula and Bridget Powers from Australia gave an interview that left viewers' jaws on the floor. They were recounting a dramatic carjacking incident involving their mother, but it wasn't the story that stole the show, it was how they told it. The twins spoke in a mesmerizing stereo, often saying the exact same words at the exact same time during the live interview.
So we dropped everything and we went running out the front. We seen Mum running out from the house up there.
At times, one twin would start a sentence and the other would finish it in perfect sync, as if they shared one mind. The effect was so uncanny that the clip went viral worldwide, and even Jimmy Kimmel invited them on his show out of sheer fascination. The sisters themselves just laughed it off, saying their brains think alike at the same time after a lifetime together. Indeed, Paula and Bridget have spent 51 years dressing alike, working together, and practically living in parallel. So, while it seems paranormal, it's likely just an extraordinary sibling bond. Viewers thought they spotted a shape-shifting reptilian on the news, but the truth was more technological. In an old CTV news clip that resurfaced online, a female reporter delivers the headlines when suddenly her eyes appear to glitch. During a blink, her eyes don't look human for a split second, they seem fixed and glazed over, almost like a doll's, or a computer-rendered image. Experts explained that it was a rolling screen repaint artifact from the broadcast. Basically, this was an analog TV signal glitch. On old antenna TV, if the signal degrades at the wrong moment, in this case when she blinked, part of the previous frame's data can briefly hold on for a second. The result? Her eyes open from a prior frame overlaid on her face while blinking, creating a creepy illusion that her eyes blinked but didn't close? Technical or not, it looked really freaky, like an NPC in a video game failing to load its textures. Even after hearing the explanation, some joked, "Sure, that's what they want you to believe."
This footage was uploaded to YouTube by a man named Michael Hernandez, whose doorbell camera saved him and his family's life. He wrote in the description, "At around 3:30 a.m. my family and I were woken to my Wink and Ring app notifying me that there was a motion at the front door. The app must have sounded 3 to 4 times before I finally woke up. Once I opened my eyes, I noticed flames coming from my bedroom window. I immediately ran to the front door to turn on the hose, but couldn't because it was way too hot. I ran back out to try and extinguish the fire with an extinguisher while my fiance called 911. This is pretty wild footage. I mean, it is crazy how fast this small fire turns into a full-on inferno engulfing the front of the house. Terrifying. Back in 2021, a stalker in Dallas, Texas had been standing outside a woman's apartment door every night. The woman posted footage from her doorbell cam on Twitter along with the caption, "This is what I've been dealing with since October 31st. This man has been outside my apartment almost every night. I have contacted everyone that I know to contact about this. What is it gonna take for y'all to protect and serve?" Very unsettling situation indeed. I mean, we're not pausing the footage here. The guy just stands there, perfectly still, staring at her door. Fortunately, she provided an update. Later, writing, "I am safe for now. I have friends and family here that confronted him, so hopefully he stays away. Since my post has gone viral, last night security did 2 routines throughout the night. Thank you everyone for the continued support." Here we see a couple Jesse Pinkman looking guys trying to rob a woman's house. Is anyone gonna get the Jesse Pinkman reference? I don't know, Breaking Bad, it feels like it just ended yesterday, but that was like, what, 2010 that ended? Oh my god, it's nuts. Anyway, the homeowner was fortunately at work when these guys showed up, but she shared the video with her neighbors online and the men were found and arrested. They were pretty dumb. It's really silly because they both come up and they knock on the door, then one of them looks down, sees the camera and says out loud, "Oh crap, there's a camera," so they immediately turn around and walk away. So now you look suspicious. I mean, no one would have really thought anything, right? Until you did that, you're just knocking on the door. And then it just gets dumber because they come back 1 minute later after being captured on video exclaiming, "Oh, there's a camera," before rushing away. So What do they do now when they come back? Well, they try to kick the door down, but the homeowner starts talking over the speaker and they just run off again. I wonder why these two were so easy to track down. Back in 2017, a massive fire broke out at the City Place Apartments in Overland Park, Kansas. It was so big, fire crews from all over the area raced in to help. While all that was happening, a guy named Matt Bell was just sitting at work when he got a motion alert from his doorbell camera. He opened it up, couldn't believe what he was seeing. Flames were ripping through the apartment building behind his house. His camera caught it all as the fire started to spread, and Matt watched helplessly as the flames jumped to his bushes and trees not far away. His neighbor's house was already on fire. At that point, Matt figured his own place might be next. In the end, his house had some damage. There was a hole in the roof, scorched deck, some ruined patio furniture, but it could have been way worse. Homes around him were not so lucky. A lot of them were completely destroyed. At least 22 houses were damaged in total, thanks to flying embers. This next one is just really cool, honestly. Back in 2018, a doorbell camera in Alberta, Canada captured a blazing meteor lighting up the night sky. The footage is so clear that you can actually see the meteor breaking apart mid-air, creating this massive flash before disappearing. Experts who saw the video said the meteor likely exploded in the sky and its fragments landed just east of Fort McMurray. Thanks to the camera's angle and timing, the video gave scientists a much better shot at tracking down those pieces. And if you're ever lucky enough to see something like this, you might want to know that meteorite chunks can go for about $10 per gram, which is lower than I would have expected. I mean, it's something that came barreling down to Earth from up in space, right? I mean, meteor fragments help scientists get a better understanding what our solar system would have looked like billions of years ago. $10 per gram. This final clip is exactly why people get doorbell cameras. A guy gets woken up in the middle of the night by someone repeatedly ringing his doorbell, which is rarely ever a good sign. People don't usually show up at your door with good news at 3 a.m. Well, when the dude checks the camera, he sees this. An older woman standing there, kind of swaying back and forth, holding what looks like a kitchen blade. She's not really saying anything, just standing there, ringing the bell over and over. Can't help but wonder what might have happened if he'd opened the door without checking first. Was she confused? Was she actually dangerous? Hard to say. One thing is for sure, if he didn't have the camera, this could have ended way differently. So this one is straight up terrifying. A woman in Kent, Washington caught the exact moment when she was followed home by a masked guy with a firearm. All of it recorded on her home doorbell camera. You can see him run up behind her just as she gets to her door, and she manages to slam it shut literally right before he reaches her. It just makes your stomach drop. The footage was originally shared on Reddit by a now deleted user a couple years back, with a warning that people, especially in the Asian community, were being followed and targeted like this. Apparently, Kent had already been dealing with a wave of these follow home style robberies, which is why the city actually partnered with Ring in the first place. This clip shows exactly why. This is a wild video though. If she'd been even a second slower, this would have ended way differently. In April of 2023, a doorbell camera in North Ogden, Utah captured something horrifying. A man named Jeff Roberts showed up at his brother Scott's home, rang the bell, and after a short conversation at the door, pulled the firearm out and shot him. The two had been in a long feud over their mother's estate. Jeff didn't stop there either. He went inside, fired at Scott's wife Jody, who fortunately lived, then lit the house on fire using road flares. But instead of running, he went back to his van, grabbed more weapons, and waited, clearly expecting a standoff with police, and that's exactly what happened. When 3 officers arrived, Jeff opened fire. One officer took cover behind a brick mailbox as bullets zipped past him, hitting the mailbox and his car. Somehow he wasn't hit. The officers fired back more than 50 rounds and killed Jeff on the front steps of the burning house. All of this was captured on this doorbell camera. Investigators later found a 27-page letter in Jeff's van where he ranted about how his family had cut him out of the estate. He believed his brother and uncle manipulated their mother and turned her against him. Friends said he'd been bitter for years. Back in November of 2019, a doorbell camera in Los Angeles recorded something that's still haunting people in the neighborhood today. A woman screaming for help, like her life was depending on it. And it is very possible that's exactly what the case was. You don't actually see the woman in the video, but you can certainly hear her. A neighbor's security camera picked up the audio, and another nearby camera caught a white car speeding away right after. Witnesses said they they saw a woman with dark braided hair in the front seat, screaming as a man pulled her hair back. One person reported hearing the man say, I'm sorry, while the woman cried out for help. Police looked through missing persons cases in the area, but they never figured out who the woman was or exactly what happened. The LAPD said they couldn't tell if it was a kidnapping, a domestic situation, or something else entirely. To this day, no one knows what became of the woman in the video. This one's nuts. So a guy walks up to his door, reaches for the handle, and then pulls his hand back like he's just seen a ghost. He didn't see a ghost, but it's just as scary, if not worse, for some. He hadn't expected to see a snake chilling right there, and I definitely didn't see that coming either. Footage was captured in Salisbury, North Carolina, and posted to TikTok by user tbarber959799. Now, I gotta ask, is this a common thing in North Carolina? Let me know in the comments. The video is short, but it is so good, not just for the snake surprise, but also the guy's reaction. We all felt that woo. And then there's the cat just sitting there staring at the snake, completely unbothered. Gotta love cats. Anyway, not as scary as a lot of the other stuff on this list, but I don't know, I figured we needed a slight break. What you're seeing here is news coverage in Laos of a mysterious phenomenon known as the Naga fireballs. Every year in late October, crowds gather along the Mekong River in Thailand to watch red balls of light float up from the water and then vanish into the night sky. They're called Naga fireballs, and locals say they're caused by a giant serpent spirit that lives in the river. The orbs don't make any noise, they come out of nowhere and they rise fast, sometimes hundreds in one night. There's been a lot of debate about what's really going on here. A Thai documentary once claimed it was just tracer rounds being fired by soldiers across the river in Laos. Others have blamed flare guns or some kind of flammable gas bubbling up from the riverbed, like methane or phosphine, but none of those explanations totally hold up. The balls don't behave like flares, and scientists pointed out that the conditions needed for gas bubbles to ignite like that don't really line up. In 2021, during a strict curfew, officials made sure there were no people out with flares, and the fireballs still showed up. This footage was taken in downtown Milwaukee in 2018 during a live broadcast. The news anchors had no idea what they were looking at. Fireworks? Aliens? They joked. It's very strange. This doesn't even look like your typical UAP footage. These things aren't moving in any sort of recognizable pattern. They're just floating in every which direction. They almost look like ghosts zipping through the air than any artificial object. And there are so many of them. It's really cool, but if I saw this in person, I'd be pretty unsettled. What do you all think of this one? If someone can enlighten me as to what this could be, please share your thoughts down below. This next one comes from a 2017 episode of the British talk show This Morning, featuring a couple and their possessed doll. The chair it sat on started to rock on its own several times throughout the interview.
That chair's beginning to rock.
Rocking.
Look at that.
Who's doing that? Stop it.
The owner said that she and her husband had been walking by an antique store when they spotted a few old-looking dolls. The couple decided to buy a few of them because they were cheap and figured they might be able to flip them for more. Well, as soon as the dolls came home with them, strange things started to happen. They had one doll, the one they brought to the TV studio, sitting on the dresser in their room. Well, one morning the husband got up, hopped in the shower, and then suddenly felt this burning sensation on his leg.
And I looked down and there was a lot of scratches all over my knee.
They put the doll in their shed inside a plastic bin. Well, a couple days later, the wife went in and opened the bin, only to find that somehow the doll's necklace had been removed, even though it had been wrapped up tightly on the doll initially. And that night she woke up at 2 a.m. hearing this whooshing noise moving past the bed, almost like the rustling of clothing, or more specifically, a dress. There was nothing there. They ended up selling the doll. Did Pope Francis vanish into thin air on live TV? This was filmed back in April of 2020. The Pope showed up at the window above St. Peter's Square to bless people affected by the pandemic. Then he turned around and walked back inside, only before he was out of camera range, he suddenly just vanishes. You don't see him slowly disappear into the shadows. He's just there 1 second, then he's not. It's pretty bizarre. It's hard to find the original news segment online too, because it was taken down for some reason. 2010, a Jamaican news station covered a story about a boy who claimed that he was being haunted by a duppy, basically a ghost. And the news team captured two strange incidents on camera. First, the boy is sitting in a chair talking about the strange experiences when all of a sudden he flies backward, as if something is pulling him. Then later in the segment, the boy claims to see the spirit standing close by watching him, and then he gets pulled again. At least that's what it looks like. Now, notice how one of his legs is in the air as he continues to move backward. And then when his mom grabs him, his legs flip around like they're being grabbed at by someone, only we can't actually see anyone. It could be faked, but it is a damn good performance by this kid if it is. Alright, so at first glance, this just looks like some streaker running around a soccer field. If you're watching casually, you might even laugh it off, but the longer you watch, the weirder this footage is. This figure shows up from multiple camera angles, dashing through the crowd and along the edge of the field, and nobody reacts, at all. No one turns their head, no one flinches, it's like they don't even see it. Then you notice this thing doesn't look fully solid, it's kind of see-through. There's a moment where it looks like it passes right through a group of people. Plus, this person actually ends up on the field, and if you know anything about stadium security, you know the second someone who's not meant to be there steps foot on the grass, they're getting tackled and dragged off. But here, nothing happens. So in 1977, during a regular news broadcast in southern England, the audio suddenly cut out. The picture went all fuzzy, and there was this buzzing noise. Then a strange metallic voice cut in, claiming to be Vrillon from the Ashtar Galactic Command. And for nearly 6 minutes it delivered this bizarre message, warning humanity to stop fighting, destroy its weapons, and prepare for a great awakening. It also told viewers that they were being watched and guided by beings from other worlds. The station was completely unaware of what was going on until people started calling in. Engineers figured out someone had hijacked the signal by targeting a specific transmitter that rebroadcast signals from another tower, basically exploiting a weak point in the system. But even still, they never found out who actually did this. Whoever it was, though, needed some serious technical skill and equipment. People have analyzed every part of this message. Some say it was just a prank, others think it was someone who genuinely wanted to put this message out there, and then there are those who actually think this message was coming from somewhere up in space. I'd love to believe that, but I don't. Back in March of 2015, Coco 5 News in Oklahoma City was running a normal early morning traffic report. Nothing exciting, just the usual aerial feed from their Grand Casino Skycam out in Shawnee. But then, out of nowhere, this glowing white object zipped across the screen at lightning speed. It was super fast, too fast to be a plane, and the movement doesn't look like a drone either. The news anchors didn't even notice it live. Viewers caught it first and started flooding the station with questions. To their credit, the news station didn't ignore it. They re-aired the footage and posted it online, asking the public to help figure out what it was. Problem is, nobody really could. It wasn't a meteor, those fall, they don't fly sideways at a steady height. It wasn't a bug on the lens either, the light shifts as it moves and you could see it behind distant clouds. It wasn't a military or commercial aircraft as far as anyone could tell, and it didn't match any scheduled flights. Despite being caught live on air and analyzed frame by frame, nobody's ever nailed down exactly what this thing was. Alright, this is an interesting one, because it's not what happened on TV that was the mysterious part, but what was going on with viewers while the broadcast was happening. So in 1992, the BBC aired a Halloween special called Ghost Watch. This was a fake documentary about a haunted house in North London. The thing is, most viewers didn't realize it was scripted. The show was presented like any other live broadcast, except the crew was investigating a poltergeist called Pipes. Viewers at home would catch glimpses of the ghostly figure of Pipes in the background of shots, and there would be weird audio glitches. On top of that, of course, the subject matter was just unsettling on its own. The atmosphere felt real. Too real, and as the broadcast went on, people started calling in to report their own paranormal experiences. Others were convinced that the show had invited an actual spirit into their homes. The BBC got tens of thousands of complaints. One girl reportedly entered a catatonic state after watching it. People were legitimately freaking out, even though the show had a brief disclaimer at the start. If you happened to tune in after it, you'd have no way of knowing that this was staged. The format fooled a lot of people, including some of the presenters who weren't even told everything that would happen. Scientists and psychologists later studied the public's reaction to the show, calling it a rare case of mass suggestion triggered by media. The show only aired once and the BBC banned it for a decade. In November of 2024, a local New York TV station was doing live helicopter coverage of traffic over the Hudson River. Same old stuff, until this strange glowing orb floats into the frame, hovering, changing color, then darting out of view. It starts out white and then turns blue and kind of semi-translucent before flying off. The anchor didn't react at the moment, but when the clip was shared online, people started talking about it. Some blamed lens flares, some guessed maybe it was a drone, others said a weather balloon, but the object didn't behave like any of those. It hovered, it changed color, then accelerated. Not even the FAA had an answer. Back in 2014, a gamer was caught being robbed live on Twitch. Nikki Elise from Arizona, who streamed under the handle Sajidine, was mid-game when a pair of armed men broke into her house. At one point, she hears shouting from the next room, then gets up, to see what's going on. Shortly after, a voice yells, "On the ground now, on the ground," while the live stream continues. Eventually, a man with a firearm walks into the room and starts bagging stuff up. Minutes later, the intruder turns off the lights and disconnects the webcam, finally ending the stream. Now, luckily, no one was hurt, but Sajidine's Twitch was taken down for violating the guidelines, which is just, talk about adding insult to injury. One of the wildest live stream stunts during Hurricane Milton. There's a sentence that makes the modern world sound completely dystopian, but one of the wildest live streams during this hurricane came from a kick streamer named Mike Smalls Jr. He decided to take part in a so-called Hurricane Challenge, where another streamer promised $70,000 to anyone who could survive streaming through the storm. Smalls went live in Tampa with nothing but an umbrella and an air mattress, telling his chat that if he hit 100,000 views, he'd actually jump into a flooding river. Well, he hit his goal and made the jump, and things got serious. The wind started picking up, and I don't know how to swim, Small said. His mattress started drifting away. He had to grab onto a tree to avoid being swept off as well. Tampa police made a statement saying, intentionally placing oneself in harm's way could divert critical resources and delay vital rescue operations for others. Now, Smalls did tell viewers at one point though, quote, "Don't save me. I don't want to put your life at risk." He got a good amount of backlash for this situation, but this is also the internet and its live streaming culture, so any publicity is good publicity. And he said he'd do something similar again if the price was right. In the world of just chatting live streams, streamers often take their audiences along with them through their daily lives. And that means that sometimes creepy situations get caught on camera. Case in point, watch this woman in black with the hat. She was being followed by some creep when she noticed a group of people hanging out on the street and quickly inserted herself into their conversation, pretending to be their friend. Luckily, the group caught on pretty quick and they went along with it. Watch the dude in gray with the ball cap though. He's the dude that was following the girl. At first you think he decides to walk off as soon as the woman is surrounded by people, but he creeps back, lurking right behind her for a bit before finally deciding to leave. Even then though, he turns to stare at her a bit more off camera. Now, luckily things did not escalate and the dude finally left, but had this woman not found people to help her, who knows what would have happened here. This next story happened during the height of the Pokemon Go craze. Back in 2016, a man ended up live streaming his own mugging while hunting Pokemon in Central Park. Reki Yaneza was out around 12:20 in the morning, searching for a Snorlax, like you do, when some dude creeps up behind him and just socks him in the head. Ricky had gone all out for his Pokemon Go setup. He used a custom rig that held 3 phones at once, one for the game, one to chat, and one to live stream. He was fully absorbed in this and was just taken totally off guard. The video shows the robber taking his phones while viewers watched, commenting live as it happened. Ricky ended up with a bruise on his cheek, a scab on his elbow, and of course he lost the 3 phones. But he said, "I'm alive, and that's all that really matters." Back in January of 2024, a Japanese Twitch streamer got a live audience for one of the scariest moments of her life. Shiori_Japan1, who'd only joined Twitch a couple months before, was streaming from her home in Niigata when a 7.6 magnitude earthquake suddenly hit. She felt some tremors, then an alert on her phone went off. A big earthquake was about to hit. The live stream continued as everything started shaking for more than 40 seconds after she left. Luckily, Shiori was fine, but others weren't so lucky. At least 48 people died. Rescuers were trying to free people trapped in collapsed buildings. This next one is incredibly disturbing. This is the case of Russian streamer Stanislav Reshetnikov, who went by Replay. Back in 2021, he was sentenced to 6 years in a penal colony after doing the unthinkable on a live stream. On camera, he was seen verbally and physically tormenting his girlfriend Valentina, while viewers just sat back and watched. Even worse, actually, they sent him money to keep doing this, and things just escalated until he forced her outside in freezing weather with no clothes on. Hours later, he brought her back in, and that's when he started to panic. He told his viewers she didn't have a pulse. At first, people thought she died from hypothermia, but investigators later found she'd died from blunt force trauma to the head. I mean, I don't even know how you begin to wrap your head around something like this. It just makes you kind of lose your faith in humanity. And I'm sure most of you have heard about this recent case. Jean Portmanov, whose real name was Raphael Gravin, he was 46 years old, and he'd built a following of over 500,000 people across social media. His streams on the platform Kick were known for pushing limits, with him often being the target of extreme challenges set up by his streamer friends. Well, his life ended in one of the worst ways imaginable. 10 straight days of brutal torment. Viewers watched as he was forced to stay awake, had objects thrown at him, food was shoved into his mouth, and he got fired at with a paintball gun, and there was also worse stuff. All of this was at the hands of his so-called friends, all for views. By the end of this barrage, Jean died on stream, and it was viewers who reported it to the police after realizing something was terribly wrong. French authorities later confirmed that 2 streamers were taken into custody. This case has brought a lot of attention to the growing trend of just horrific things being carried out over live streams. More specifically, what's called trash streaming, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. Streams that center around humiliation, dangerous stunts, just pure shock value. This one just happened like last week. South Korean creator Shin, better known as Angry Korean Gamer, was doing a live stream where at one point he and his friends thought it would be entertaining to put one of them in a chokehold on camera with a countdown timer on the screen. So the dude is lifted off the ground, struggling for air. He tries to tap out at one point, but the dude with the hold doesn't let go until the very last seconds. By then, the guy goes completely limp. For a moment, he's just slumped forward, twitching. He's having convulsions. Everyone in the room looks unsure of what to do. Then he finally gasps, and he comes back around. Instead of calling it off, though, Angry Korean Gamer, he bursts out laughing. It is insane cartoon bully behavior. I mean, this dude could have easily died. The whole live streaming thing, it's just gone way too far. It seems to just bring out the worst in people. And that's also the case here. Next up, we have the Raja Jackson incident. Everyone has been talking about this case, and for good reason. It's pretty shocking. So for those not in the know, Raja Jackson, son of UFC legend Rampage Jackson, was at a pro wrestling show in Sun Valley, California. Not a WWE thing, this was a smaller event. Raja was live streaming everything on Kick. At one point, he was meeting some of the wrestlers in the parking lot outside the venue when he's introduced to a wrestler named Psycho Stu. Raja doesn't know who this guy is. Psycho Stu is like, "What, you don't know me?" Then proceeds to smash a can over Raja's head. Now, the thing is, for some reason, Psycho Stu thought that Raja was, I guess, part of the show. He was filming a promo or something, that's why the cameras were there. He hadn't actually been trying to hurt him. It was a wrestling stunt. He crushed the can with his hand or something. Anyway, there's a way to do it where it doesn't actually hurt the person, but it was still a really stupid thing to do on his part. And if Raja had hit him right there and then, that would have been self-defense. The case would have been closed, but that's not what happened. Wrestlers stepped in, told Stu that Raja was not a wrestler, and Stu was like, "Oh crap." was very apologetic about it and tried to smooth things over, explaining it was all a misunderstanding. Now, Raja accepted the apology, but was also told he could be worked into the show later, crashing Stu's match and getting a couple hits in on him. Pro wrestling hits though, so not real ones. Now, at this point, things seemed fine, but for the next several hours, Raja Jackson watched as his viewers started commenting about how he's, such a pushover and how he should have knocked Psycho Stu out, yada yada. Just went on, and Raja just got increasingly more infuriated by the whole situation, basically telling his viewers yeah, I'm gonna actually mess this guy up when I get in the ring. And that's what he did. When the time came, Raja rushed in, picked Psycho Stu up, who thought that this was all part of the show, mind you, and then slammed him to the mat. It was not a proper pro wrestling slam, because that's not what Raja was intending. Stu was just knocked out cold after this slam. Then Raja starts wailing on him. He got 23 heavy blows in to the head before other wrestlers finally realized what was going on and stepped in. Stu was unresponsive. He was rushed to the hospital, and for a while he wasn't even waking up. People weren't sure if he was gonna live. Luckily, he's been released from the hospital now, and it looks like Raja Jackson might be arrested. We'll have to wait and see. Back in February of 2018, a guy named Stephen Ellum went live on Facebook behind the wheel of his car outside Middlesex Hospital in Connecticut, rambling about the Illuminati and calling himself Jesus Christ. Pretty standard stuff here. Well, minutes later, he drove straight into the sliding glass doors of the emergency room, and he poured gasoline on himself and lit it on fire. The live stream captured the crash, the flames, the chaos inside the hospital as around 30 patients and 20 staff were evacuated. The hospital security guard was treated for smoke inhalation, but no one else was hurt. Ellum was airlifted to Bridgeport Hospital, where he later died. Back in 2014, ABC 7 covered a story about a strange creature captured by a couple in South Texas. Jackie Stocks told the news crew that her husband spotted a weird creature in the yard eating corn. The husband said he'd hunted raccoons and said he'd never heard one growl like this before.
Harma says one of the big signs it's not a raccoon is its growl.
Now, they also interviewed an apparent wildlife expert who looked at footage of the strange animal and said it was probably a canine with mange. Thing is, canines do not use their hands the way this thing does. I mean, have you ever seen your dog eat like this? I didn't think so. Wildlife expert, maybe go get a new career? I don't know. This footage was shown on One India News a few years ago. In Jharkhand, a group of bikers were riding along late at night when they saw this person walking along the side of the road. The video is pretty grainy, but you can still make out the figure. It looks pale, extremely thin, and moves in this weird, unnatural way. It doesn't seem to move its arms. It's like that character in Seinfeld that doesn't move when they walk. When it turns its head, it also seems to have these glowing yellowish eyes. So people online started commenting that this thing looked a lot like an alien. Of course, no one knows for sure what the bikers caught on camera, but whatever it is, I would be very uncomfortable seeing it anywhere at any time, let alone a rural road in the middle of the night. Back in 2019, 9 News Australia ran a story about a pub called the Tyler's Kiln. The pub is owned by a man named Alistair Collins, who's pretty convinced that the place is haunted. Collins had a whole collection of late-night security footage showing some really odd stuff happening after hours. Chairs are seen sliding out from tables all by themselves. Umbrellas suddenly pop open with no one around, and doors slam shut even though the place is completely empty. One of the news anchors even tried to recreate the chair moving like it did in the footage, but he couldn't really pull it off. The ground is just too uneven to smoothly drag the chair like that, and setting up a string or some trick would have been pretty tough without it showing up on camera. They also tested how the umbrella could have opened on its own and figured it would have been nearly impossible to pull off without someone being caught in the frame. The creepiest story probably came from an electrician who was working there during some renovations. He heard small doors swinging near the kitchen and loud footsteps heading upstairs. He thought the only other person in the building had, of course, gone upstairs, but when he called out, said person came walking out of the kitchen right in front of him. So what was going on up there? Well, they went upstairs to check, and no one was there. The whole top floor was completely empty. I love stories like that. This next piece of footage still gets shared around online from time to time. Back in 2016, something strange happened during a Sky Sports broadcast. After a game, pundits Jamie Carragher and Phil Neville were chatting about the match, as sports commentators do, but eagle-eyed viewers at home noticed something weird in the background. There was a shadowy figure moving across the empty field. At first, it just looked like a regular groundskeeper doing cleanup, pushing equipment across the grass, but then the dude just vanishes. Viewers immediately jumped online to talk about what they saw. One person wrote, "Did anyone else notice the ghost groundsman?" Another said, "Monday Night Football, keep an eye out, there's an effing ghost groundsman in the Northeast." And someone else joked, "Ghost groundsman at the Stadium of Light, the ground needs an exorcism." No one from Sky Sports or the stadium ever confirmed what it actually was, and the pundits never addressed it.